Unapologetically Black with LaWana Mayfield on the Square Media Network. My guest today is a returning guest and a friend of Square Media Network, Mr. Robert Dawkins. Thank you for coming back and joining me as we are getting ready to close out my final show of this season.
A great first year, too.
This has been pretty amazing for me. We are going to hit a lot of topics, but so that everyone knows, yes, we are going to be talking about the 2020 census. We will close out with that, but there's just so much happening around Charlotte with government. I am no longer in office. Yay! And everything that goes along with that and everybody else's opinion of what I should be doing. But I would love for people to just know a little bit more about you. But what is the question that you always want someone to ask, especially, and let me back up. Congratulations on being named Charlatan of the Year.
Thank you.
That is amazing because it's usually the corporate people that are put in those roles. There's been very few times that it's been someone that's come from the community, that's still a part of the community and a major voice in the community that gets recognized, especially someone who's Black. So congratulations on that, my brother, because that was a major achievement.
You've helped me over these years. I'm not talking about on city council.
Right.
I'm talking about back in the 90s when we were both organizing.
Yes.
So now maybe you got time to come on back and get back out in the community organizing.
I miss those days. So I've been trying to figure out. I claimed that I was taking these next few weeks off. I haven't started yet. So this is week 2. So I'm trying this week to figure out how to actually take some time off. But I wanted, because I think you do a lot of interviews. A lot of people bring you on and they have these stock questions that they ask. What's a couple of the questions when you leave, when you say, you know what I wish they had asked or they should have asked me about?
Yeah. How does this build power for the community is something that I've never had anybody ask me. And how does this translate into something that's a social good as opposed to how does this help build money or wealth or any of that? Seems like people in Charlotte concentrate on quick hits to try to make money, and they figure if money is made, it's going to trickle down, like Ronald Reagan used to say. I don't know much in Charlotte or in Mecklenburg that goes and starts with the people, and how is this going to build power to help not just these people but their kids. And that's why we're in these situations like upward mobility, and it's great to give it lip service, but until people start saying how does this build power for poor people, for Black people, for Latinx people, for the whole community, LGBTQ people, then we're still just going to always be dealing with this superficial grass top stuff, and poor people still always going to be suffering.
Right, because they're buzzwords.
They are.
So let me be the first as we're closing out this year to ask that with all the work some people know if they watched the last time that you were actually on the network, you joined one of my fellow co-hosts and you gave a little of your background because a lot of people don't realize that yes, you are college educated. But here's the question: all this work that you've been doing with action, with NACA, with community, with Charlotte, with the state level, with the national level, how does it build power in our community?
The thing is, we can't talk to people. We have to listen and try to come back with how we can make change based on what people want. And I don't see that a lot in Charlotte. So most of the places I go, and again, I'm not being crucial on stakeholders, but people go into this thinking, I need to do this for the community because this is what they need and this is what they want. And then when you go like us and talk to people on the doors, they're like, that's not what I want.
Nothing about what I want.
Nothing like what I want. I hear a whole bunch of that. Like, we spend a lot of time talking about upward mobility without even understanding the study.
Right.
So I get that a lot. People that sit in ivory towers saying, Charlotte's 50th in upward mobility, and that's embarrassing, and look how we're not helping the people that need to be helped. And then they say, well, from what I get from it, if Charlotte was first in upward mobility, they'd brag about it, and they'd think the job was done. The difference between 50 and the difference between 1 is about 6 points. Which means if you're in Charlotte, 96% of people born in poor neighborhoods don't have a chance to get to the top 10%. If you're in number 1 city, 90% of the people living in poverty still don't have a chance to get to that top 1%.
Exactly.
So while you're using these fake little benchmarks, you're not helping the community that much. It's just making you feel better.
It is a pat on the back because that was one of the things that I used to speak to, of which we need to say
Toast.
cheers.
I was going to say, we laid on the
Thank
toast.
you very much. We laid on the toast. Right there. So when I think about even before running for office, when you and I were a part of the group, you think about it. We wrote the language along with help from Charlotte School of Law, from Isaac Sturgill, when School of Law was at its height, before it went through the transition, where we graduated some real activists and people who actually cared about the community. And we talk about the importance of ban the box and what does that mean to remove that box off the application.
Way longer than that. So, LaWana, you remember your first parts in organizing when you was doing prison reform. People weren't talking about there was no word pipeline to prison.
We did not have that
Rich
word
white people
back then.
hadn't read Michelle Alexander's book. So when you would go out and talk about it then, it flew over people's heads. They were too busy to work on other things. Michelle Alexander writes a book. People have a book study. They come back and now they're experts in pipeline to prison, and
so you know what?
It's a buzzword.
Let's connect the dots on that because we've been doing it. So luckily, I have you here with me because I can talk about some things and say things that I've been a part of. I'm lying or I'm trying to puff myself up. People don't realize we did a lot of work on the ground long before acknowledgement.
You're the first black person I think worked at the Latin American Coalition. Weren't you the first black person to be at the Latin American Coalition?
But because I was the community organizer for grassroots leadership, so I was the first Charlotte organizer, and I thank Cy Khan because what he gave me was the opportunity to create the program however I wanted it. So I was able to say, ending for-profit private prisons and immigration reform. Before 287G, even when it was first being discussed, we were out there protesting the county not to even bring it. But these dots that we connect. When I was out there listening on the ground, talking to the community and looking at the impact of why we need to end for-profit private prisons and what it was doing. Fast forward, people got mad because I said, okay, so are we not going to have a conversation about the increased number of white supremacy that we're seeing in law enforcement? I'm the bad guy. Just so happens that happened to be the time that police were negotiating their new salaries. But even at that, okay, you want to throw me on the bus. Not one of them black folks on council stood up alongside of me. But then fast forward a year later, a study comes out talking about, oh my goodness, we cannot believe the number
of white supremacists in the police department. Well,
that are signed online joining Nazi groups and joining white supremacy groups.
The study gets done every few years. This wasn't something that just came out in that study.
No.
It's been around ever since. If you lived in a southern city in the 60s, people had there was a law enforcement had dual membership. The Fraternal Order of Police and the Fraternal Order of the Ku Klux Klan.
Which is one and the same as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what skin color you are. Unfortunately, once you put on that blue uniform for a number of people, not all, because we have amazing officers out there. But I also say that that bad officer will get that good officer in a very bad position and or killed. So if we're not even going to acknowledge it, then we can't fix the clear bias that is there. Because again, you look at just Charlotte, because when I shared the media post, we weren't even talking about our city. We weren't even talking about North Carolina, but they jumped on it. And I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, then let's have a real conversation. How does a black man who is squatted down with a car door open, talking to somebody, a vehicle next to him, unless he's able to do a 20-foot vertical jump, where the hell was he going? You came in hot, but we spent millions on de-escalation training. We spent millions on tasers. We spent millions on body cameras. But you justifiably, in your mind, little white woman, came in hot, stayed hot, killed this black man who was squatted down in a kneeling position having a conversation.
With a preacher.
But yet, you have this little white boy walking to UNC Charlotte. God, I send prayers up to all family members who have lost loved ones throughout our entire city. But your ass walk into UNC, kill multiple, wound multiple, and they arrest you? You should have been dead on the scene.
Well,
so
I don't want anybody to be dead on the scene, but
we might not want anybody to be dead on the scene, but there's a challenge that we have to acknowledge. And that when it comes to black people and brown people and people of color or perceived of color,
And it's institutional. So the police are the institution that has the guns. But let's not get it twisted that that's the only institution that white supremacy raises its head.
Oh, yes.
If you're an African-American boy in schools, there's white supremacy in our schools. And school teachers have a definite bias against kids of color. You know, you see it in every institution. The only difference is the police department is the one that has the guns and the right to shoot you.
Look what just came out in the last 24 hours.
The teacher's got the right to expel you. The teacher's got a right to ruin your
And look at the
record
number
for
of our students, overwhelmingly, who are expelled. But you just had in the last 24 hours the test that wasn't sanctioned by the school board, where the teacher was asking the students, okay, so how many black people does it take to make up the life of one white person?
Yep.
And then you get to have what? Plausible deniability to say, well, that's a personnel issue, so we're not going to discuss it?
Nope. And we try to keep our finger on all forms of white supremacy and all forms of people being oppressed. The one thing that I can say different from the schools to other institutions besides for the police is they don't self-police. And that they themselves, so the NCAE, the teachers union, you may get suspended with pay, but the NCAE is going to look at it and say this person right here needs to be prosecuted. You know, city workers, if a person was drunk on the job,
yes,
they're going to say you should suspend him with pay, same as the police. But when we find out that he was drinking, he needs to be fired.
Yes.
The only institution that says we investigated it ourselves and we found out that right there was justifiable and he shouldn't be prosecuted is the police. So when people are thinking we're being so anti-police, we're not being anti-police. We're being more over the top maybe than other people because they are the only people that get to self-police, and they're the only people that don't go to trial if the district attorney doesn't think that he can make the
unless
case.
He can win it.
And if you're anybody else except for a police officer, you can indict a ham sandwich, but you can't indict a police officer.
The other challenge is people don't understand that more than anything else, we're process people, and you have a organization that gets to maneuver daily outside of the process, and there's little to no transparency in how the conversation moves forward. There's little to no accountability, and when you're constantly seeing that, when we're still marching, protesting, we as black people, we as Latinos, we are as Asians, we as the lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, questioning they, them, their, he, him, she, hers, however you identify community. And this is the exact same conversation we were having in the 50s and 60s. There's a problem because we don't have this conversation, honestly, within the Jewish community. Because there's a different level of access that has been granted, but that access has been granted strictly off of your pigmentation and what is perceived as your pigmentation. Because we got plenty of biracial people running around.
I guess my
people just
pushback-
don't think they are. They are white.
I guess my pushback a little would be, and there's a lot of anti-Semitism that still exists, but the reason why the Jewish community is able to get something done a little bit more is what we went to in the beginning and said, how do we build power for our community? When African Americans and other groups are saying we need to teach our history, the Jewish community makes sure that they teach their history.
But they also have access to schools. They also have access to banks. They also have access to funding. Like one of the simplest ways that to me was a glaring opportunity is in charter schools. Why have we not identified a number of retired teachers or educators that have come together and created an African American charter school? You have an Asian run and taught charter school. You have Jewish schools. You have Catholic schools, you have Christian schools, you have all types of schools.
It's the one institution that African Americans will stand behind no matter if it's failing them. So we are quick as African Americans to say, as far as law enforcement and criminal justice is concerned, we have no faith in the police, and we shouldn't put all of our eggs in the handbasket of the police because there's systemic racism. The only one of the institutions that black people will say, please do not change, please do not cut the money from, please don't set money aside for charter schools, is education. It's this brainwashing that we went through. I was telling Joel, and Joel and I disagree on a lot, but on the charter school part, the problem that I have now being here since 96 was I knocked on doors with people in 96 and they said, we're going to keep investing in public schools because West Charlotte, Garinger, and these schools are going to turn around for my kids. So you go in and then you find your kids when I'm knocking the doors in 2010, and they say, no, we don't want to move away and do nothing. We want all the money to go to public schools because it's going to change for our kids. So now it's 2020,
yes.
and those kids are having kids, and I still want to stay over on the west side of town, but West Charlotte and these schools are still failing me. But sooner or later, it's going to do something for our kids.
When we have the perfect opportunity, the moment they open up that door, even though full transparency, I was not a fan of the idea of charter schools.
Oh, yes,
I believe my
totally
tax dollars I should be able to determine where my tax dollars go, especially when you're putting the limitations on public school that you have, especially when we go back and recognize that we let an individual who was part of a larger conversation come into our city, go to court to say busing is no longer needed. And then what do we quickly run back to? High poverty neighborhoods, low performing schools, because we went back to neighborhood schools. So now as our neighborhoods are transitioning again, as you're seeing new development happening off of Freedom Drive.
Yes.
As you see new development happening in all the areas that were predominantly where working class, working poor people would gather, because that's what we can afford. Now we're getting priced out. What I'm wondering is what's going to happen with those schools then for the ones who you can't get rid of because we own our homes, we're not renters.
Then the school district will improve because the parents that moved in can afford to have good PTAs, can afford to have good involvement in the schools. The school will be flush more with money, but the original people that were living in the neighborhood will make up the bottom 30% of the test scores, the same way they made up the majority of the bad test scores when there was more of us in it. The trade-off with mixed income housing, and this is the only way that we can fix housing, is through using mixed income, is that it doesn't clear up the poverty for the people less impacted. It just spreads them out so that now there's instead of there being a whole area that's poor, now there's just little pockets all around the city, and the people have to be transient. So, I know plenty of people, I go and knock on the door again, they're not living up off of in Greer Heights or living in that neighborhood anymore. They went to the motel. And they lived in the motel for a while. And then hopefully they found something, or they're bunking with their cousin or their auntie or their sister. But that's hell on schools because the kids sometimes, because of Charlotte's transients now of being poor, is in 3 schools before the end of that school year. They done made it to Garinger. They done left Garinger and had to go to West Met, and then maybe they found that little pocket of low income that's over on the east side, and now they went over there. Well, what they do is now instead of sending them to Myers Park, they put them on a bus and bring them down where I'm living now in Butler.
Exactly.
And boy, those white people down there really don't like it because they po too, but they don't like seeing no po black folk. And
it's a conversation that we have to have. It's a transparency conversation because I was always pushing that idea of intent versus impact.
Yep.
And I'm going to say we because I was a part of government for 8 years. We talk a good game about the investments that we're making or that we're going to make without tracking. So even when I was chair of housing and in 2016, the proposal was we're going to have 5,000 units and we're going to accelerate it from 5 years to 3 years. But you weren't addressing the fact of how many units are we losing.
Yeah, we're losing.
You never wanted to talk about that impact. We never wanted to address the impact of, okay, so we're getting ready to allocate how many millions, and you're telling me we're only going to get 5 units in here that's under 300? Because if it's 30% or below the AMI, then that means what you can afford is $350 to $357 a month.
Yep.
I'm personally not a fan of subsidies because I feel like they're a setup. Because if you can afford if you're working 1 job to 3 jobs, if what you can financially afford just for rent is less than $400 a month, giving you a $400 voucher is a setup if we are not putting you in a position for you to get additional training, certification, and connecting you to a job that's going to pay you those additional funds so that when that subsidy runs out, you're in a better position. If otherwise, we're putting you in a worse position
I feel your point.
because now you're in debt.
Now, the reason that I push for the subsidies is because, cost of living and things are going up so high that I'm hoping that people will get those wraparound services, and in that meantime, they won't lose their place, and the subsidy helps, because once you lose the place, now you've opened up a whole new can of worms, and you can't, in this cycle, save to get back in a place, because now you're staying in $120 a night for a beat-up hotel over on the west side, and you can never then save the money. But what Charlotte's also got to do, and I don't know how we do it, every time that I applaud, y'all did a great job when you was on city council of bringing businesses, but the jobs still aren't jobs that the average person in Charlotte can get.
Exactly.
And until we fix that, one, we got to get it to where companies will pay a living wage.
We don't do Charlotte first. Other cities have created language. If you're bringing a headquarters in, then you have to have a local hire for X number. The main question that all elected officials should be asking, if you are looking at any type of subsidy, how many local jobs are going to be hired? And when they're only pushing and staff is pushing, well, it's going to be $100,000, excuse me, a year jobs. Okay, but what's the lowest paid worker make? And if we know the cost of living in our city today is $22 an hour is what you need to make, and if you're paying someone $10, $11, $12, you know that is not enough.
Well, that was a situation that y'all were having with the American Airlines issue.
Exactly.
The problem was American is the one that contracts out the work.
Exactly.
And we can't put the pressure on American to
Can't
do
make
it
them to
because
tell
that's
their
their
vendor,
subcontractor.
their subcontractor, this is how much you need to pay. But yet American did agree that, okay, if they come back and ask us for more, we have already set aside more.
Yep.
But if they don't come back, we local government cannot force American to pay a higher wage to their subcontract.
Right. Now,
but
the
we
city
negotiated.
fixed that. Now, the city fixed that in two stages. You remember before the city said they'd pay people I forgot what it was then. It was before you went to the $15 an hour. They raised the pay.
We did it in 2013.
Yeah, they raised the pay. But they said that
we did a cost of living increase.
I can't tell the contractors what to pay their contractors. And then I think y'all went back recently, and I know the city's different. The city's different than a corporation. But you set the example by saying if you're going to do business with Charlotte, you've got to pay the $15 an hour.
So let's
rate.
go back and look at one of the reasons why, because we were talking a little bit about it offline when you were on the show and you did your interview over at Noble Smoke.
Yeah.
And why I say I personally would never spend my money there. Yeah. Because one, as a business owner, I'm not going to give you the money for you to create legislation to try to keep me from having access to
definitely
a better quality of life. But the other challenge with that is when we go back and read HB2, even though the focus both for the LGBT community and for those who was so-called protecting this fictitious woman, because if you really cared about women and our rights and our health and our protection, then why is the legislation that's on the books, you spend more time for abuse of an animal than you do for abuse of a female, so whatever. But it didn't take 4 pages. But in those 4 pages, you also, because Charlotte was having a conversation where we had already passed the starting wage, we increased it up to 15. We had already passed ban the box by this time. We were having conversations about if any contractor comes in, they can't pay below our minimum. That was in the HB2 language. So the General Assembly cut our legs off from under us. So when you say, well, okay, he's creating jobs for people. Okay, you creating jobs where we the people are really paying your workers, because if you're a server, you get paid $275, and if you don't make enough tips, you're not making enough money.
Right.
So, but your funding, you put hundreds of thousands of dollars into creating language that wasn't just about bathroom. You knew what that full language was going to be because you're a business owner. And as far as I'm concerned, you're an unscrupulous business owner because you know you ain't got no more damn ABC licenses out there. So this is what you do. You create a partnership with a brewery for the brewery to be a separate entity, but inside your building where they only brewing beer for you so that they can get an ABC license. So when you're going to play those games, I'm not patting you on the back and giving you an award because you're some great white hope.
Yeah.
No, let's look at the totality of what you do because that's the equivalent of those that, okay, Mr. Dawkins, I see you doing great work out there. I'm going to write you this $25,000 check for this work that you're doing, but I'm going to write this $175,000 check for the ones that's doing the work in direct opposition to you.
I definitely feel it. And I think even on the show, I said LaWana's got her right to do it. You know, that was one of my main things. Is where you eat there. Well, LaWana said, and LaWana grown woman. LaWana got her issues with it. I'll say the same thing about it. And there's some businesses that I see that we frequent that I myself won't go to. I'm not a big fan of Camp North End. I myself will not go. I don't blame people that will go to Camp North End, but I've been in Charlotte long enough to see that Camp North End is the new NODA.
They displaced all of us.
And they displaced all of us, and that's where it's going. So I understand, and I never stop anybody for their judgment on what they do, because the system that we in now is made up by people that's screwing us. And I try to find people that I think can do, because the one thing that I can say for that particular business is anytime that we've went from our community mission on getting people jobs and saying, here's 8 people, can you get them a job? And they say yes. Now, then they go do other stuff that I don't agree with, but they still lived up to something that we asked. That's the reason that I go. One of the people that I can say never did anything bad in our community, somebody that went out of their way to help our community, got killed in the streets a couple days ago. And that's one of the few people that I can say, because I got a problem with other black people. I got problems with people being hypocritical. The whole time that I've known and gone to Brooks, I can say that family has never been hypocritical. When the neighborhood changed around them, everybody that was from the neighborhood original was still welcome there. Still got called by name. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? Glad that you came to see us today, Jimmy. 2 hot dogs, order fries, reasonably probably $7. Hey, Mr. Brooks, add it up. I got $6. Take the hot dogs, Jimmy. Make it up next time. If not, cool. You know what? I got 2 acres of land sitting here, and I hear on city council that they need land. It's not a lot of land, but I'm going to give it. And then so that really saddened me. Right. What really also saddened me was the response that got taken at the city council meeting. We gonna talk about that. But you actually had a different question for me earlier, because you heard an article. You heard a question that was asked. You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. Because you was asking me something. I said, save it for the show.
So I was listening to sports radio,
which I know nothing about.
So I was listening to the local sports radio show on the way down, and the guy Kyle that's on the show was recapping. So he always recaps the show before it ends. So I got in the car at 5 to come down here at 6, and that's the end of the show. And he was recapping, and he said, we've been talking MLS today, and we had Councilman Bakari in here, and he got kind of ticked over us and information that was supposed to be leaked about MLS. And what I showed you was the clip. I don't know if you can hear. It wasn't the whole clip. What they posted was this.
Have you spoken to her since? Yeah, I've seen her once or twice. It's funny because LaWana and I, over the last 2 years, we had several different battles at times, and clearly there are many topics that we were just on polar opposite sides of. But there were a couple things that I actually, really appreciated about her. I think one of which is, no matter how sometimes out there her position was, you could always count on her to take that position and stay with that position. If you think about the RNC vote and what happened there, she was the only one in that first closed session that became public record later on that said, no, I'm not cool, Mayor, don't go after this. And 10 other people said, yeah. So that's one thing. And then on a second point for her, you could also count on her not to leak information. Right. And this day and age, I'm not going to lie, we're basically a ship with a lot of holes in it, and
There's been a lot of information flying out today
And it's
with various
ridiculous.
reporters about the MLS.
It has. And while I am going to do what every single council member has been instructed to do and should do, which is not comment on it, I will say very specifically, it is unacceptable, inappropriate, and reckless if you are an elected leader.
Okay, so I agree with that because if you go back throughout this whole year, even before 2019, we will have a closed session of which, so that people have an understanding, with city council, when you have a closed session, that is specifically to run the idea, hey, council, here's a potential
business investment.
Right. Here's a potential business investment. Here's some general information. All we want to do is gauge, yay or nay, are you interested in us and staff moving forward to get more information? That's what the closed session is for. That's when we get to ask questions. Hey, can you tell us anything about the company? How much? Whatever. But
So he's mad at somebody.
He's
so
mad, and I would be upset.
I think what he said, his point is
that why?
Let me show you on an example of someone I always didn't get along with. But I can tell you one thing: LaWana would leave a meeting and leak.
No,
why did somebody?
We
on
had
city
people
council
where literally
leak?
verbatim, word for word, reporters were called. But we also learned at a recent council meeting before my last day on council was last Monday. Before that, two different people in council, both Dimple and Matt, talked about shared conversation that they had with reporters, and several of us turned around and looked at them and was like, you do realize that when they call you, they fishing. They really don't have any specific information. Just by what you just shared, you're the one that's clarifying everything for them. Now, also for me, one, I don't keep up with sports radio. Two, I actually had a reporter text me today asking me something. I texted him back, you do realize I'm no longer on council. And also, I got my own show. So if I'm going to talk about it, which I am, mainly because this young man right here, Charlotte nearing finish line in race for 30th MLS team. Why? Because it was on the news.
So you can say what you
all
want
over
now.
the news.
Yeah. So you can say what you want now.
It was on the magazine news. It was on the television before I left out. I have my opinions regarding MLS. I agree with actually comments that you shared and things that we've talked about over the years. We have a housing crisis. I feel like too many times while on council, I was the only council member that had major concerns about city council going to the community and asking for an increase on the bond, and then turning around under the mayor's leadership, guidance, pushing, hand all our authority over to LISC.
That right there has been a major sticking point for us in the community.
With that.
When we went out, and I know we're just going to talk MLS, but to go back, we were one of the main groups that went out, and when the city made its piece of material for the community, we were knocking so many doors that I would show up over at the chamber to pick them up, and they couldn't split. So we was knocking 15,000 doors, so we had to go print our own. And you will remember at the same time, Fred Kelly at the Observer was pointing out some of the same things, and a lot of people on our coalition said, "Oh, what do we do?" And we said we're going to keep pushing for the city to have accountability around the money.
And at the same time, as your council representative, I was asking the same questions that we were asking from the community, but I was like the only one that was asking the question.
But
hey,
LaWana,
what is this going to do?
But at that time, LaWana, nobody told us that there was going to be an intermediary.
No one told council that.
Yeah. So then
no one told. There was not a conversation with council about that prior to pushing to the community this $50 million. Because if we go back, because luckily, the one thing I will say that Councilmember Winston created that was a good thing is putting everything on Facebook. So everything's live. You can go back and watch. When we had the committee meeting, I asked in the committee, one, why are we going for 50 instead of 30 million? Because we can't prove to the community what we've done with the 15. So how are we going to? Can we at least earn this?
So my biggest issue is
Responsibility.
So my biggest issue will be, and I know the 9% LIHTC deals, the low income tax credit deals, isn't what LISC was going to concentrate on, and those
Because they got no experience in it.
But those are going to be done before LISC was up and running in May. But what we did in January was we came out with the communities to say some of these deals that are these 9% deals you send into Raleigh, we don't think should be included because they're bad deals. And you, the mayor, I think the mayor's word was, after listening to people, something in here don't smell right.
But you push for these and you encourage them, and it's only because some of us publicly called it out and addressed it, and it made you feel uncomfortable and not look good.
So at least one bill had to be pulled out.
Right, because you were a slumlord in South Carolina.
Right, yes. So then we get the next round of deals. My whole point is LISC wasn't up and going when most of the money that was spent, and I know it's not it was being allocated.
Yeah.
Now half or less than half is sitting there, but I'm still not hearing from LISC. And one of the things that we fought hard for was to have community voice in it.
And you, along with many others, triggered me to reach out to fellow elected officials around the nation because of the relationship with National League of Cities that had LISC in their area. Because
but this wasn't a
y'all
LISC
were
job.
saying were saying that LISC in the current communities was not being a good partner to the community members that was supposed to create a group. So we had a lot of questions.
So you remember back in the days, I'll give you the example. You remember how people would go to get help for housing, and NACA had its own model. So it wasn't that NACA was bad, but NACA was a community grassroots organizing group that we're going to help you get the house, but you also got to take these classes because we want you to preserve the neighborhood and all that. And people would look and say, hey, I'm kind of confused because I just went to get a house. Same kind of thing with LISC. LISC does great work in neighborhood capacity building. That's what they do.
And that's what's supposed to be their focus.
That's their focus.
That's it.
Not
that's
managing,
their strength.
Not managing the allocation or advising the city on how to spend its bond money.
Multiple millions of dollars.
And that's been an issue. And what's secondly been the issue is how many boards was going to be set up, who's going to fill the boards, and how much say do all these boards. So you got a board made up of mostly the banker people. You knew you were going to have them to make sure that the money is being done right because this is a bond. You knew you was going to have another grass topsy board, which was going to be made up on all of these other groups to help do the leverage funding.
That and the executives that know what those people need in their communities.
Yes, and we also know that we have very smart people with us in the Housing Justice Coalition, people from One MEC, people from Greenspun, people from all of that.
Homeless to housing.
That should make up a community board.
Yes.
We were not happy with that being the last priority to set up and that the money was going out. Now that these boards are set up, I still don't know. And you just left council. You don't know.
I don't know
what have they met about? What have they talked about?
The mayor reallocated 4 times in 2019 committee assignments. So you eliminated housing and neighborhood development with a focus just on neighborhood development because, again, if we go back and watch the meetings, from the dais, I spoke to the fact that we as council, we are the ones who are responsible to the community for this bond request. And we are abdicating our responsibility to this nonprofit organization that is not held accountable to anybody.
And that's just one example. Charlotte City Council gives up all of its responsibility to the bureaucratic system as much as they can, to the point that to the point that the city council is mainly going to be an advisory board to the city manager.
That is what I said. That is exactly what I said, that we're going to keep playing, and Charlotte City Council is nothing more than an advisory board because they keep, but unfortunately, a lot of it's been led.
We need to elect the city manager and appoint the board.
Because here's the reality. A lot of that happened under Vi's leadership. Vi has maneuvered, it's not the point that she's the black female mayor. It's the point where whoever's in office, including me, you challenge the work that I've done. You're supposed to, but we can't just step to the side and not acknowledge that she has maneuvered as a strong mayor, not as a council manager form of government.
Well, one, I think Charlotte needs to move to a strong mayor system, but that's a separate argument. And I'm always going to be
with the leadership that we have.
I'm always going to be a LaWana fan.
It needs to be 4-year staggered full-time term.
I think
that is the only way that I would even consider it, because right now what you have is so you have to think about it. For me, and I can only speak from the eye, 6 mayors, 4 councils, 3 city
in a short period of time.
managers and 2 city attorneys, 1 mayor. Anthony Fox was the only mayor out of all 6 that I worked with that actually came out of one end of the 15th floor, come down, talk to us. Whether we agreed or not, we knew what direction he was going in or that he wanted to go in. We knew every announcement that was going to be made. There was never a time that his full council did not know to show up and be out there.
There's definitely a difference.
His communication style was very different.
So I'm a LaWana fan and I'm a Mayor Lyles fan. And there's always room, I think, for everybody to improve. But I think that Mayor Lyles is very strategic and she doesn't like to tip her hand. I think she's strategic. I just don't think that overwhelmingly the black community, especially the black working class, working poor community, has been or is a priority for her. And what I have seen in what we push forward, even with this conversation with MLS, how we maneuver certain conversations, how we had an accelerated conversation about tethering of animals, how we had an accelerated where people came, complained about it one Monday night, and the very next week we're having a discussion about it, when we have had people come down and talk about the fact that they cannot afford to live in the city, they can't afford to start a business in the city, and it takes us 6 months to bring that back to council, but you're going to bring almost immediately a conversation about some tethering of some damn animals. I'm going to stay out of this one, Steve.
No, you don't get to stay out of it on my show. You don't get to stay out of it because the reality is hold all of us accountable. You don't pick and choose who you're going to hold accountable. And at the end of the day, the mayor's role as a weak mayor, you are basically, you're in the rooms having conversations, but you're not supposed to be out making commitments without your council. Because if the council knew its power, if this council truly understood its power, they would do the same thing that Vi did to Jennifer Roberts when Jennifer Roberts was the mayor. Because in my opinion, Jennifer had her faults. Jennifer don't know how to run a meeting to save her damn life. Her heart was in the right place, but she don't know how to manage as far as government. But almost everything that Vi said Jennifer was attempting to do is exactly what I've seen her do. With her maneuvering as a strong mayor, not as a mayor council that then moves forward a direction. You go out and you make commitments. Council finds out about it in the news, on the news. You go out and there's a ribbon cutting or a big job announcement. Select council members get advance notice. Everybody else gets it within 24 hours.
So we've got to figure out then
we got to do something better.
What type of system we want Charlotte to be. And
we are pro-business, we are pro-business, pro-sports.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying even bigger than that.
But how do we help the community?
I'm saying even bigger than that because it also has its drawbacks too. But we've got to commit to one. We got to commit to one form of whether we're going to be a strong mayor like Chicago, where the mayor can say today, I'm mad, shut down the rails and the rails stop.
Right.
Or we've got to say that we're going to be this weak mayor with a city manager that's running the day-to-day. But if that's going to be the model, then city council can't keep giving up its ability to have oversight.
And that's the challenge because council doesn't know.
So I know in North Carolina, most of the larger cities raise their threshold for city manager buying power to $500,000.
Right.
I knew that. But Charlotte's being where it was and raising it was a problem to me because every time that I would sit and talk to people on city council, and go back and talk about stuff that I'm seeing that's going on in the bureaucracy, many a times the people on city council didn't even know what we would be talking about.
Exactly, because it takes training, Robert. I need you to understand.
Or the
you don't
big
get to
issue,
just show up and you know how to do this.
Or the big issue is that people put so much faith in the bureaucrats that the bureaucrats may have their own agenda, especially if you're going to be a pro-business and a pro-sports town. So us on the community side, people would make it sound like we're just stupid. We don't have sense because, we got folks that like we had with us from the Greenspan Center. These people got PhDs from the Duke and the same MPA programs as theirs. But you get branded as community activists and you don't know what you're talking about. And the city manager and the city staff said, this is what we we need to do. And they do it in a way that where they're saying, we work for you. We're giving you the professional advice, and everybody else that's coming and saying stuff to you are idiots, have an agenda.
And I'm going to challenge that a little bit, because what I will say is 3 city managers later, I will say that what I have seen. Oh, no, I got, Steve, we're going to need Steve to help us out to bring that.
Steve didn't know he was going to be Maitre
bring
D.
that back over here.
He's going to go up on your rate. Steve's going to go up on the rate.
So, because
Maitre D service.
This is what I realized. That bottom. Because Mr. Dawkins has run out. Yes, sir.
But no,
so,
still, before you even say that, you have said plenty of times when we brought you stuff, this sounds real. I'm going to get clarification from the city. And then you've come back and looked at it yourself and gone back to the staff and said, you said this won't work, but it's working here, here, and here,
but
and they're the same type system
Here's the thing, though.
And
that's
then
because
backtrack.
I took the time to learn. That is why, honestly, National League of Cities, why, though, not going on the chamber trip for $3,800 for a day and a half, but actually going to learn how to be an effective elected official, because there's a big difference between being a candidate and then being a policymaker. So I took the time to actually learn policy, not only to utilize all the work that all the knowledge I gained in the community, and then how do I blend these two? Because I got pushed back daily. Well, which hat am I going to wear? Am I going to be an advocate, or am I going to be an elected official?
When you got on city council, just to back that up, when you got on city council and you decided you were going to do housing, there was a whole difference from LaWana when she first got on housing. It's more than you learn the acronyms. You spent the time to make sure that you totally understood the issue. And what I'm seeing a lot of times is that since, another thing that y'all need that's going to help also fix that, but that's separate.
Go ahead.
Is that y'all need real staff. So the way that it's set up now, I think the mayor actually may have 1, 2 people that's
5.
So the mayor's got actual people to do that. Like if you go to Chicago or you go to New York, so LaWana's got
all
3,
the city council has at minimum their own staff person, if not up to 3 staff people. When you look at the size, because a lot of the way the districts, which again is why we're going to have this important conversation about the census, is because when we're out, our districts are around 120 to 145,000. That is very difficult for a part-time staff that you're sharing between 11 council members. Yeah. And you're trying to manage and trying to learn this because, again, you don't know what you don't know. And you got to find out how to ask the right question.
Sometimes, even though the bureaucrats will try to make it sound like we don't know, the one benefit that we have over most of the city council people is the moment that I want to know something about a Tiger grant, then I'm calling the national transportation people and I'm talking for 4 hours about Tiger grant, Charlotte's last Tiger grant. What's the possibility for Tiger grant to go? Then I call the urban.
We don't utilize
Then I call the Urban Institute and they say in North Carolina the Tiger grant would be blah 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 blah. Then I call Center for Popular Democracy. I do the same amount of work before I come to city council than I did the grad papers. And here's the part that I don't get why that's not available to the people that's on city council. So mainly what happens is y'all get caught between the staff that's saying, because you remember the example with the 9% LIHTC deals? Staff kept saying this was the thing that this is how it's supposed to be. This is how and we're like, no, you do not have to just send deals. There's nowhere in any piece of legislation that says that y'all have to send bad deals. And they were saying for months, we can't. And then finally said we push back. The same thing was, remember when we asked for subpoena power for the Citizen Review Board. First time, it can't be done. The legislature won't let you do it. Then we come back and the next time after somebody else got killed, it's something we will explore. Then when Jonathan Farrell got killed, I think we can do it. Well, what took 6 years of us saying we know you can do it?
That's what leadership. No. So
but they were telling us,
but there's a real answer to that.
No, you can't do it.
But there's a real answer to that, Robert. That real answer to that is when your mayor and council work together. Council sets policy. The manager's office. The manager is then his responsibility is through his staff to implement the policy that council has identified. When you have a disjointed council that's not even on the same page together regarding the impact of how we move forward. This whole conversation with MLS. Tara was absolutely right. I'm not going to talk to a news reporter because I'm a process person more than anything else, and I think it's disrespectful if we're trying to have a conversation. I let everyone know exactly where I stand. I said it on Twitter where I stand.
Now, on this,
so,
this is
on TV, was on the news.
This is one of the reasons why I'm saying we pave the way. We're a business and we're a sports city. But when people are going to sit here and say, oh, $100 million, and we don't know if we could do it, we voted on it as taxpayers to set money. As long as it's there, and we're not talking about general fund money.
Exactly.
We voted as a
hospitality
people.
And tourism.
And when you go and look at it, we set it up in 4 buckets. We set it up in a bucket for Bank of America, a bucket for NASCAR, a bucket for cultural facilities, and a bucket for the convention center. Mm-hmm. We set up in the buckets, we set up different triggers. We set up triggers for debt service. We set up buckets for upfits and refits. If you go and look,
and we have contractual obligations on a lot of these.
You go and look at Bank of America, which I want to say is bucket number 3, until the end of 2023. It says that we will set aside money.
Such a great memory.
Until 2023, we will set aside money for upgrades and upfits.
Because remember, we did the tether.
Yes.
So when we had the conversation, the county moved out, but we did upgrades because remember we did a number of upgrades.
Now the whole discussion with city council is does this upfit count as something that's already included? Now the other point is I don't know what the current money's sitting at, but I know 126 million's got to come out for the convention center. $8 million's got to come out for the UNCC Center. I don't know what year we are in with Time Warner, but the Bobcats require a debt service to fix on that. We require a debt service to do remodels at the Levine and the Blumenthal. Discovery Place wants a remodel.
Yeah.
All of this, but
have you seen that request?
No, that's huge. But when people will say, and I hear it all the time, well, y'all are fighting over the Housing Trust Fund. Why aren't you fighting as much for the tourism?
And people don't understand
because the
different
taxpayers
buckets.
said to pass the tourism point. And the one thing about that money, since it's tied to taxes, it's laid out and laid out on the Housing Trust Fund. Nobody was going to tell us who's going to manage the money, where it was going to come.
And we asked questions.
On this,
we tried to find out. We tried to ask the questions on it.
Yes, it's a total different ball game with this. Now, my thing that I don't know, and this is my issue, is up and beyond what's in the Housing Trust Fund. How do we tie anything else that's MLS related to a community benefit agreement, which the city's never done before?
So it can be done, but again, it takes the leadership of council. With thinking about the leadership of council, what we have to recognize is we have a dysfunctional council. So I am going to go in here and pull up.
Don't show no secrets.
You silly. I am going to pull up Monday night's council meeting. Now, mind you, I was not there.
But you still going to watch it because you've been there for so long.
How do let me put
Because LaWana, why you doing that? There's definite opportunities in this that I'm thinking that the city, of course, is looking at. One is that big spot over at Eastland Mall ain't making us no money, and the city bought people out of it. Then they paid for the rehab. Then they paid to clear it up. They got the federal government deemed it an opportunity zone. We still want the streetcar to be completed to go out there. There is some benefit.
We got public transportation issues that we need to address.
There's some benefit. Now, here's the thing, and I'm a loyal sports fan. Here's where the city's, to me, has got to stay strong. David Temp is not going to want to give up any of that parking revenue. The city will make back most of that money if they can get that park. They ain't got to get all of it. But when people say, why would I go spend $100 million on this? Well, if I get the parking, why I spend $2 billion on this arena? Well, if David Tepper gives you the old stadium ground, which is now prime real estate, that's got value. If he turns around then
again,
and
these are conversations that have to be had
because that's high risers want to be there, so that's millions of dollars worth of space that hopefully the city would say, if we're gonna help you build a new stadium, does that mean we get the old land for the stadium? Because we can put high risers up on that puppy.
But that's a valid question that we need to ask that we're not asking.
The next
we're
question
not asking
is
that question.
Every time I go park my car at that stadium, that's $40. $40 times $60,000 every Sunday is a lot of money. Are you gonna get any of that? That's how you offset this cost. And I really do not think when people are thinking about it, from being a hospitality worker myself and working for places like Show Pros,
where my wife still works part-time.
I counted on Panther games to be there for me to work, but that was only 10 times a year, 2 preseason games and 8 games. Now if you added and I got 32 games to go to, you just benefited me from that. So there are benefits to having this, but it should make sure that the benefits are laid out to people in Charlotte, seeing that the community is really getting a benefit before you say yes. And Smudgy also did.
But we're disjointed.
Yeah, because Smudgy did have a point.
Disjointed council.
Because Smudgy did have a point too. Everybody that says when the Hornets left, everybody was saying before, build us a stadium or leave. The moment that they leave and people stop saying Charlotte and start back saying Charlotte, North Carolina, around the country, people get upset. And then what would have cost them $20 million cost us $80 million to get them back. And for soccer, as much as I'm just starting to get into it, the way I like basketball and the way I like football is the way the Latinx community likes soccer.
And not just because we have a very diverse community. So our Haitian community, our African community, our young African American community. Young people are really into soccer. We have soccer is probably one of the most diverse.
And you don't get CTE. You don't get CTE.
But I'm going to play a clip. I was going to show it on the screen, but I'm going to play a clip that I have, and in the meantime, just have our picture up, because we got to recognize. I am also worried
about one other thing too, though, LaWana.
It did, but I'm going to just play.
The other thing I'm worried about too, though, LaWana, unlike the NFL and unlike the NBA, professional soccer right now is not making a profit.
Professional soccer is not making a profit.
It's not making a profit at all. It's got some cities that's doing well, like Atlanta, and then you got other ones like Grand Rapids, Iowa, that nobody's showing up. The smart thing that Tepper is saying is, I'm not going to ask for money for a separate soccer stadium. If the sport goes out and fails, then that's screwed. But if it's a joint football soccer stadium, I get more revenue if the sport goes out. The city didn't lose. That was the problem with the deal that the Knights, what's his name, the car dealer people were doing.
Well, remember,
they wanted
because
a standalone MLS stadium. But what if MLS goes out
it was
of business?
Originally supposed to go out to Memorial Stadium.
Yes.
So
but
that was also politics, and that was personal relationships and who didn't like who and that kind of nonsense that stopped that. But again, you have to have a council that can come together. At the end of the day, you're going to agree and disagree on votes, and that's fine. But there has to be a level of respect there. So when Monday night's meeting, again, I did not watch it. I heard about it, so therefore I had to go back and watch it in preparation for meeting with you this evening. As you mentioned, with Mr. Brooks.
Oh, yeah. And before we even get to Mr. Brooks, let me ask you this. Can you tell me that $100 million investment on the MLS team is not going to guarantee you just as much, if not more, than the $126 million investment in the convention center that's only adding 2 5,000 square foot convention spaces and glass windows?
No, I cannot guarantee you any of that. So.
Oh, yeah, this is Braxton. He was mad.
Before this plays, let me remind you guys, the whole show is predicated on the census. I haven't heard anything
I know.
about the
I
census.
told LaWana that. I want to talk census.
So you've got only about 20 minutes left in your show.
This is why I like Steve. We're going to talk census.
But here's the thing. Why is the census important is part of this conversation, because if you're elected officials, of which everyone can go to Charlotte, thankfully on Facebook, you can go to the City of Charlotte, you can pull up Monday night's meeting. But when we talk about how funding will be allocated through the national level, that is a very important conversation, because our elected officials have to come together.
Steve, I really would like an hour or hour and a half show on census.
Well,
is
that's
that something that we can do? So January is the hot month.
It's the hot month because
Can
right
we
now we got.
but I mean, it'd be just.
We can
there's
do
so
just
much
the
to go.
census. I was supposed to have a census worker. I was actually going to have one of the local staff from the census on, and they had to go through their red tape because we started about the census earlier.
So what about
in the
me
year.
and Laura
But-
McCletty?
right,
Laura and I do the census.
So when we think about what it is and the fact that earlier this month, it was identified that we needed more than 500. We still needed more than 500 employees to get trained for the census.
Yes. So here, I want to update
And that
people on
census
that.
pays people.
Yeah, I want to update people on that. So there was a question when I was at Tuesday morning breakfast talking to census, and people said that they filled out and they haven't responded. I need for people to make sure that they're checking their email and checking their junk folder.
Okay,
because
spam.
everybody that's got filled out should be got something, because interviews are starting in January.
Yes, the beginning of the month.
And if not, then I think that they need to be checking to see, because right now they are seriously in a deficit on African Americans and Latinx people working for the census.
And they're targeting certain zip codes where we've had
those
historically
are
under
our
represented areas.
Our hard to count areas. Our biggest thing, and I don't know if it's covered in there, that we got to let people know, the census isn't coming to knock on your door this year unless you do not respond to about 2 to 3 different letters asking you to go online or use the phone to fill out the census. It's the
So there's going to be
census.
there's going to be a number of market outreach
Yes.
through mail,
Yes.
snail mail, through social media.
It's up to us to do this social media, this community outreach.
Okay.
That's the North Carolina counts, Mecklenburg counts, all of us to help them do it. The census is going to send you a letter saying it's time to do the census. Go online and do it, or call this phone number to do it. Our job,
Right.
and where we're trying to look for volunteers, because we're not the census and we ain't got money, but what we're asking people to do in the community is not go out of your way to do census, but incorporate it into what you are already doing. Doing outreach for the census is the same way as doing outreach for voting. And what we know in Charlotte, we got a lot of people that know how to get out to vote and work for campaigns. It's the same thing, but instead of campaigning for
And we
a
also
person,
want to make sure people understand that for those that apply and that are identified, the census pays $18 an hour for
good
training, $20 an hour once you are actually hired, and pays up to $22 an hour if you are in a supervisory role.
And plus, once you do this first one, LaWana, in 10 years, it's a simple rehire. This is a career path. The person that's from the U.S. Census, that's the Census Regional Director, he's like 60 now. He's been working. First, he worked doing this in, what would that have been? Probably the 70s and the 80s. By the time it got to be the 80s, from him doing like 2 good censuses, he became a full-time census worker all year.
Wow.
Then, this leads to
A career path.
a career path that I don't think people are thinking about. I want to clear up some misconceptions, too.
Yes.
Steve and I was laughing about this earlier, but people do think that if you go and fill out the census, you're going to get called to jury duty. No, that's at your local Mecklenburg level. That's not at the federal level. The census ain't checking to see if you got no warrants. The census is not checking to see if you got any warrants. And I want people to understand that I can come in and quote you all these facts about $16 million going into poor neighborhoods and how the money's going to go for your roads. But to give you a real example, if Charlotte approved $50 million for housing,
Right.
and leveraged it to get $125 million of housing, and LaWana's already told you that's a drop in the bucket. Well, that drop in the bucket gets minimized and mitigated every time we don't have a good census. So the money, like we were talking about with the Housing Trust Fund, and we were talking to people, we're going to build 55,000 new homes, but you
Right.
lost 30,000 homes. Well, you got $125 million you're trying to build these homes, but if you get your federal money cut because you didn't fill out the census,
Exactly.
and you lost funding for your community block grant money, you lost the
CDBG
money for
funds.
your SNAP funds, all of that, you're going backwards. We know that North Carolina should have got another congressional seat in the last election, but without the undercount, we didn't get it.
The last census, correct.
Northern cities are slowly losing representation, and southern cities are gaining it. But we're not going to gain that representation to have more people, besides for Alma, up there fighting for you if you don't get counted. You're going to lose money. So right now, your SNAP check already got cut because Trump's a jerk. And he already cut your money. But the money gets allocated based on size and population of city. So Trump being a jerk already cut your money down. So say you used to get family, I think one person used to get some little measly like $80 a month. Trump cut that, so now you're getting $75 a month. Well, the reason you're getting the 75 was based on Charlotte's size and population. If you don't fill it out, that SNAP's not going to get cut. That SNAP's going to get cut. SNAP's going to be cut considerably. It's 10 questions, LaWana. 10 questions. And those all that we're asking people. My Latinx community, I'm hoping you will go fill it out, because not only do we need you counted to build power. Remember in the beginning we was talking about building power, but we need to make sure that there's money for language immersion classes for new Latinx students that may have come from a different country and still grappling with English. We need to make sure that there's money sitting aside for appropriations for housing. For
business. That's the breakdown.
Horrible.
In here when we look at it, how does Census, what really does it focus on? So businesses use the data to build factories, offices, stores.
Yes.
That creates jobs. It also helps for small business. So when you look at the same conversation of opportunity zones, who has access to opportunity zones? What development is happening with opportunity zones? Then you add on top of that why I was saying we need a functional local government, both city and all three, city, county, and school board, because the local government officials, through working with staff, utilize the data to work on public safety, to plan new schools, to look at new hospitals. So it's great that Michael Jordan has done that investment off of Freedom Drive for the Novi Hospital. But you being a part of the census, you participating in the census helps us to allocate more funding. It helps people like you, the community planners, to help direct our planning director, Tai Wu, in order to look at what are we doing with housing? What are we doing with neighborhoods? We know that today the model isn't necessarily building a house on 5 acres, in the middle of 5 acres of land. We're looking at very different housing. We have to look at the impact of grandmother and grandfather housing. We have to look at the impact of possibility of tiny homes and creating legislation for it.
Yes.
We have to change the whole model. We have to look at communal living space, which is very different than staying in a hotel. There are so many different models, but participating in the census helps us to get there.
But city council can't say, I need to have multifamily homes here, if they think that there's 33,000 people living up off Betty's Ford Road and it's actually 52,000 people living up off of
because
Betty's
we're
Ford
undercounting
Road.
Because we're not having a true representation, and that's also not accounting for the up to 100 people a day moving to the city, but that are physically living in their vehicles and shopping center parking lots.
Yep. You know, Mary and Joseph had to stay in a stable to have Jesus because they didn't get the chance of the sisters to come knock on their door.
Exactly.
They had to throw themselves on the back of a camel and roll all the way down to Baghdad to get
and that's the reality of how do we look at that impact today, even within our jails, and look at the resources that Sheriff McFadden is trying to create. And this is just that snapshot of the area and why it matters, and looking at how we do that representation.
And this is the part that I really don't think that people, we're talking about our schools and we're talking about minority representation in the schools and how they're failing. They cannot draw the school lines if they do not know where people are living. You want to know why schools are overcrowded? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is city says, because this happens to the city a lot. One, because we don't have inclusionary zoning and we don't have all that. We need to build some new schools. Well, we think we need to build a new school up off of Plaza Midwood because we see on the data that there is X amount of school-age kids. When really, a new school needed to be built on Betty's Ford because there was way more kids between 6 and 12 on Betty's Ford, but they didn't get counted. So now their school gets to be overcrowded. And folks say, how did that happen? Why the city didn't know? Well, the city relied on census data, but you didn't fill it out, so we didn't know little Robert was living up off of Betty's Ford.
Or that he's in grade school, in preschool right now, and that we need to start working on building the school.
And how we gonna know
in
where
the future?
I don't, neither one of us think you need a new police department all the time, but you doggone need a new fire department. And I can't tell you where there's gonna be a fire department, because that's where EMS come from. And you want to know why your response time from EMS is gonna go up? Is because they thought they were servicing the areas for EMS and fire and even
what is
police.
EMS, Robert?
Huh?
What is EMS?
The emergency medical. That's that ambulance.
Right.
So
that ambulance, medic, all them.
So they think I'm serving an area of 10,000 people now, and there's already traffic. But really they serve an area of 14,000 people. So the response time's going to be a lot less because they didn't know you was there. It's really serious. What's been our biggest problem too, LaWana, and I think you remember back when we was finishing the last census, and that was right before you got on City Council, and we were already saying there was going to be a problem. We was going to those trainings in Raleigh.
Yes.
Because you was going to be one of the people on the census lawsuit. That's the result after the census, to make sure the numbers are counted right. People feel that after they had the last census and we lost power and lost ground because people didn't go and vote, that was a big problem. Well, one of the other big problems was you didn't get counted in the census and you didn't go vote. Both of them together led to these 10 years of things being bad. So I need you to vote in every election, but I also need you to get counted. And
that's it. When we think about how
do they
get engaged with you? How do they find out how to volunteer? Who do they call if they want to have a conversation at their church?
So the first thing to do is, and that's what I need. So here's a big thing that I need. This is the first census. It's going to be for the first 2 quarters, first 2/3 of it being online. Because we've got to move it. The census worker knocking on your door and finding you at home now has almost gotten to be impossible.
Because that's what a lot of people are also concerned about. They think that even for the paid position with census2020.gov, that means that they are knocking on doors, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with that.
So there's going to be it's multifaceted. To clear up so that people don't have to go at the end and knock your door. We're trying to get people to help us spread the word and get people fired up to go online and do it. And that's going to be the job of the census people for the first 2/3 of the mission. That last third is for the people that didn't fill it out to at least go out and attempt to knock on their door. What we do know is in our neighborhoods, people are not used to the census not coming. And to say that I'm going to go online and answer these 10 questions, and we don't give them the reason to do it, and we don't give them the internet access.
Right. So that means we got to partner with the libraries, because not everybody has internet access in the neighborhood. Not everyone has a smartphone, and it's not just our elders.
We need those churches.
We have a lot of people that don't have access.
And we also need the youth. And I hate always trying to make things seem like I'm trying to be like, oh, the youth got to help everybody do stuff if it's social media, internet. But if your grandparents have been used to the census for the past censuses they've taken being on paper, what I need you to be able to do is call and say, Grandma, did you fill out your census online?
Right.
And do you want me to come over and help you fill out your census online? Because older people, and we're getting older, but I mean our parents' generation.
I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of our elders that's on Facebook and all over social media. Yeah. So some of them are listening and they're tuning in right now. You're going to be the ones that we're going to ask for you to help your neighbors, to help your bridge buddy, to help your card buddy, help your friends and your fellow church members. You're the ones that we're going to need you to step in and help them maneuver through this process.
And we're going to ask the youth also, because even though youth love social media, that doesn't mean they always love it when it's tied to a cause.
Right.
But if you don't want your tuition to go up,
pay attention.
If you don't want your tuition to go up, then the place needs to know that they're getting more students so that the cost of tuition can be lower than lower students, and the cost of tuition needs to be higher. And they're not going to know that.
Repeat that again. For you students, you those of you that are in the 12th grade
Yeah.
and 11th grade is getting ready to go off to college.
Yeah, so if you want to go to college, the thing that you want people in the college to know is there's more people coming so that they can offset the cost of tuition more than them thinking there's less people coming so that the tuition can be higher. So if you want your college tuition to go down, you want to be counted so that they know there's this giant in. The more people that come in and buy Jordans, the cheaper the price of the Jordans get. Because the demand for the Jordan stays. There's always going to be a demand to go to college. But if 50 people go come in and buy these J's on my feet, they go cost $250. If 100 people go come in and buy those J's, it's going to be $225. And either way, it's still going to be hard to afford, like your tuition, but it's going to be less.
Okay.
And we also need for us to also know, because LaWana is not on city council now, but you know, she still cares, and the people that's on county commission, we need to know how many people are going to be going into senior citizen facilities.
Exactly.
And you got to estimate that money right.
And looking at housing, what is happening with housing of our elders? Because the show at the end of November, 2 weeks ago, that show really talked about the impact of how do we educate our elders around their property and building wealth in the Black community. Because if you have to go into a senior living center, then you have to have little to no funds.
Yep.
So what happens to that house? What happens to the equity that's in that home? What happens if we not accounting by showing up and being responsive to the census? We're giving a false narrative that we have to address.
Well, what happens on Betty's Ford when all of these places that determine your values of your house, not talking about Mecklenburg County, but online, when they're doing these comparisons and all of that and what the community's worth, if it's $15,000 less than it was last year, then the people they're making this value look up and you're saying, why is our neighborhood looking to be even poorer?
Right.
Because they said, geez, in the census in 2010, it said there was 33,000 people.
Exactly.
At a growing rate, and Charlotte overall grew by X%. But that neighborhood, and it was really like 44,000.
Right.
They said it should be
we
at
didn't get
55.
infrastructure
Yeah, it should have been at 55,000. But this is saying it's only at 33. We need to downgrade the pricing over in that neighborhood because it's not growing. Well, it did grow.
Right.
But Junebug said, I ain't opening that door because I think I got warrants.
That's it.
I got some warrants.
Wait, we got a ring on, so we looking through the ring saying, who that at my door?
But you know, when I went to the census meetings, those are the reasons why it's got to go online. And I mean, it's common sense. I don't answer my phone as much if I don't know the number.
Right.
I don't answer my door now because I have a ring.
Yeah.
So now the census has to come up with a whole new model because I might know LaWana and I might know Robert, but I don't know Steve, who decided he was volunteering at the census. So he at my door, I'm not going to open
I don't know you.
So I'm not going to get it filled out. So now it's our job to say, you ain't got to wait on Steve. Okay. Starting in January, you're going to get something in the mail, and the day that you see it, go fill it out. Because I love the fact that we are in Gastonia doing the studio, because I'm also closer to my hometown in Spartanburg on the other side of us. But the reason we got this studio in Gastonia is because you can't afford to live in Charlotte. You can't afford to have this studio in Charlotte. And until folks get counted and people actually get a grasp on the numbers, then it's not going to change.
So again, how do they contact you?
704-957-3105. You can reach me at robert@actionnc.org, and we will get you in touch with the forming this Mecklenburg Complete Counts Committee. And we also have it on both sides. So Hector's doing the Latinx part.
Hector Baca?
Yep. We got people that's also doing the Southeast Asian part. We don't have anybody that's doing the African part, but we were going to reach out, and we're hoping to get in touch and get references from people like Patrice.
Okay, because what I can commit to is one of the groups that I am also a part of is the International Minority Coalition, which Willie Fleming is the founder
Willie's good
of.
people.
So you have representation of really Charlotte, because you have representation of the Indian community, the Latin community, the African community. You have representation of the diversity of Charlotte, and
Yes.
we're having the conversation about
because
the
they
census.
all have reasons that are internalized on why they shouldn't do it. A reason for somebody from Gambia or Ghana or Liberia may not be the same reasons of why somebody that's African American or Latinx doesn't
Right.
fill it out. And we want everybody
Because we
to be
think
counted.
Big Brother's always watching us, like we talked
Well, they
about
are.
it. We know that I can look at an ad on my phone and it'll pop up on my computer in multiple social media sites. So we're concerned about that, and we have a natural distrust of the system. Hopefully, what people will understand is there are multiple conversations happening about the census. Take the time to learn and ask whatever questions that you have.
If you don't want
get
that
out
bridge,
of that comfort, that
If you don't
uncomfortable
want-
space.
If you don't want that outline bridge when you coming off of 277 to go to Davidson, it's got all them cracks in it to fall in over the next 10 years, we need, because LaWana knows those city council can't allocate money for that. That's federal money. And we know that bridge in bad shape. If you don't want that bridge to fall in, we need for folks to know that that bridge needs to be, we need our share of the money to get that bridge
And they need to know how many
completed.
people are potentially driving over that bridge, which means we need everyone to take the time to participate at your church, at your school, at your child soccer practice and tennis practice, and having these conversations with the other parents.
We need more lanes on 77. We need more lanes, not toll lanes. I want to make sure that's clear. Not toll lanes.
More
but
free lanes.
But we need more free lanes. But the government's not going to give them if they don't see.
And we need the funding for public transportation,
Oh, my
because so
goodness.
many people are trying to get out of their cars.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, even when you look at the restrictions with the EPA, when you look at what was originally created under the Obama administration and how it was gutted to
Yep.
almost all of the clawbacks were taken out
He
of
did
it.
it all around. Trump did it
So,
all around. He did it on
it's
SNAP.
a shell.
He did
It
it
is
on
a complete
transportation.
shell.
He did it on SNAP.
You still drive up South Boulevard. Nothing's changed from even when we've been here for as long, me since 88, you since the 90s, where you drive up South Boulevard and the plant,
Man,
all the soap and the smell, all the fumes that you smell.
You remember when I had that Ford Ranger?
We got fog. We
You
never
remember-
had that.
You remember the first time I bought a house, I bought me a new truck. I bought me a Ford Ranger pickup. I bought the baseline, but I had me a Ford pickup to move the stuff over, and I was loving my Ford pickup. Flash flood came up on South Boulevard, and I drove through the flood, and I shouldn't have. Because, it was almost up to the doors. My damn truck screamed and hollered for 2 straight years. I'd be driving through the neighborhoods trying to bump Jay-Z, and folks be like, you need new brakes. And I had to say, I don't need new brakes. All my wiring got messed up coming
That's
through
it,
South
flooded.
Boulevard.
That's it.
We can't get the flood plains and stuff fixed until
Think
we do.
about Moorhead. Think about Berry Hill Road.
Yep.
It still floods. Again, Berry Hill off of Freedom Drive, so much new development in Camp North End. Well, all these new people, all this new development, if we do not participate in the census, those of us who are still trying to live in our area that did not pay $500,000 or high $400,000 for our homes, we're going to see the continued crunch from all sides and get displaced.
And this might be a question to you. So you remember earlier in your terms, we used to get Hope 6. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's as much on census or the fact that Charlotte got so much Hope 6 money. They
We
threw
got
it
the
at us,
last, the federal government
so
in it.
now
So
there
the
won't be no
last
more.
Hope 6 deal was actually the deal that Senator Ford had worked on, and that was at Renaissance West.
So there's no more Hope 6.
They eliminated
but
that.
whatever comes of housing, we're going to need census.
We're going to need it.
qualify
We
for
need the federal funding. We need the state funding. And again, that census is so important. We have to change the conversation for people to understand, but also we got to give it to our community, honestly, in small bites. We have to give it to them appetizer size, because if we give it to you in a full meal, a lot gets lost in translation, which is why we hit so many different topics, because we've had this conversation on the census more than once. We got to keep having it, but we have to keep having it in doses.
Well, I always come on your show, though, LaWana. You just come by the house, I'll come by yours. We'll sit on the porch and drink Jack and talk shit.
You know
I
what?
want to talk shit with the people to make sure they understand.
Because they need to understand. They need to realize that everything that we're trying to share as we try to educate is coming from a place of all we want is for our community to have access to a better quality of life.
That's it.
That's the baseline of everything. We want you to have as much information so that you can go out and be as educated and at least have the base information so that you would want to do additional research on your own in order to be able to speak for yourself. I don't want to be the one to talk for you.
Yeah,
I want to stand next to you.
At 51 now, I can imagine what Charlotte's going to be for me for the next 20 years on my way to be out. But if somebody's just had kids and those kids are 10 and they got 60 years or so to be around in Charlotte, if you're looking at San Francisco's and you're looking at San Antonio's, that's what Charlotte is becoming. And if you want your kids to be able to live in this city and not be San Francisco, Seattle, or San Antonio, and you priced out and got to live 60, 80 miles outside of the city, you've got to be serious on building power
Today.
Because
Yes.
Charlotte, every day I go and I love it. I drive by and I see all the new high rises and the buildings, and I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. But then I started thinking back. I remember when a hotel set there. I remember when a neighborhood
And that's the
set
challenge
there.
because for the years that I've been here, watching Charlotte change, we had.
Oh, you from Miami.
Right.
And
I grew
until
up.
the 1970s, Miami was like,
Man.
okay, it was a beach town.
But
it was the cocaine
looking at the
cowboys
growth,
of the 70s and the 80s.
I mean, that was true, but you know.
But that
was a
money,
different time.
turned Miami
Into something
something
very
that
different.
nobody that was
And
not
Charlotte
wealthy
is
could
becoming
stay.
that
Yes.
because what people don't realize is they're moving from Cali, they're moving from Philly, they're moving from San Diego. You're creating in Charlotte what you're trying to escape.
Yes.
Because you're coming here and you're saying, "Oh, that house is only 300,000. That house is 250. I'll pay cash for that." And then what does the realtor say? "Oh, if they'll pay 250, then they'll pay 3. Oh, 350? Yeah, that I can buy that easily." Okay, now they're at a high force.
Yep.
Because supply and
And not only
demand. As
did
long
they
as
do
someone's
that-
willing to pay it,
Not only
then
did
I'm gonna
they do
charge it.
that, the other thing too. Oh, more than white people gentrify. Black people gentrify
Yes, they do, but
too.
we don't never
And we
talk
don't
about
never-
that.
And I can tell you, because when you go to the neighborhoods like Greer Heights and all of that, you move from New York. Yeah, it was a similar situation, but you sold your house for $750. You moved to Greer Heights, you bought that for $200.
Yep.
Now you from New York and you change the aspect of the community because you say, I don't want y'all parking your cars on your yard and walking around in your wife beater and having a barbecue on
Calling
your
the,
front
and
yard.
now everybody got
I'm
a
gonna
ring.
call the police.
We all got a ring camera, and we are all on what's that?
So
The
be
next
good
door.
So be good to
To
each
we
other.
on next door talking
So
about.
be
Did you
good
see
to
this
each other.
person?
Yeah, be good to each other for you, whether you're black or you're white. You know, when you move into these neighborhoods,
Get to
because
know
you're
the neighborhood. Learn the history.
gentrification- Exactly. If
Learn the
you didn't
history of the
know-
neighborhood.
If you didn't know that Greer Heights at one time was a black middle class neighborhood formed by the Greers and the Billingsley's and all of these people and what it stood for, don't come and look down from them because you from New York and Philadelphia and you sold your house and now you come down here and you think these black people ain't got no sense. You know, the same thing. Be friendly to people that are from Latinx neighborhoods.
Yes.
Don't rob the guy just because he's walking down the street trying to make a buck with his ice cream cart, ringing his bell. Why you gotta rob the guy? You ain't gotta rob the guy. That's not being neighborly.
That's
and
the thing. Can we be neighborly
and
again?
white people get over all of that white supremacy shit. Cause my wife and I gonna live where we want, buy what we want. I don't
Smoke
care.
what we want,
smoke
drink
what we
want.
want. You know, there's a whole different generation. Get over that. Let's try to be ourselves to be good with each other. No, the show's ended. Be good to each other.
That's your
try
closing.
try your best to help each other.
Yeah.
And if you're still a football fan in these areas, bring Cam Newton back.
You know what? I'm gonna ride with our Panthers no matter what because my baby is a Panthers fan all day. So win, lose, or in between.
Well, G bigger than a Panther fan. She Cam Newton fan too.
You
She
know
roll
she
with
is
me.
all day,
Bring
all
Cam
day.
back.
So I got my jersey. We're gonna rock with them. We're gonna support our Panthers. We are gonna support all of our home teams. If Charlotte Council moves forward with an MLS, then I'm gonna support our soccer team. We're a beautiful city. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us.
And go
but
out to the
we're
arena.
A strong enough city.
Go out to the
to do
arena. I'm
it.
wearing my stuff. I know we
That's
don't
it.
have many
Supporting.
good players on the team, but those young boys are trying. So stop not going to the game. Go support those young kids that's out there. They're not Kimba They all 20 and 21. The Hornets are trying.
I was rocking my Charlotte Hornets gear on Sunday.
Yeah, rock. I mean, those little kids they've won 10 games, LaWana. Now, I mean, it's not like, they gonna go to the playoffs. But I mean, they've played hard enough with little talent. I said it now. I'm messing with them.
See, look at
they're growing. Go support them little kids. And tell Michael Jordan to get us some talent, too. He rich. I look at these J's I got on my feet.
You contributed.
Yeah,
thank you for contributing to the cause.
Yeah.
Robert, thank you. I look forward to 2020. Yes, you are coming back in the beginning of the year. Thank you all for tuning in to Unapologetically Black with LaWana Mayfield. This is the Square Media Network. Please tune in. Follow us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. Have an amazing new year. Thank you,
Love
Steve
you,
Rutherford.
Peace,
Wish you was
Steve.
over here so that we can thank you properly for an amazing 2019. Looking forward to 2020 and everything the network has to offer. Tune in to the conversation, frankly speaking, the situation, Crafted, Channel 13, Deluxe, The Slant, and The Project.
Peace.
Thank you.